The most devastating thing you can do to a narcissist is not to argue, not to expose them, but to reject them. Because rejection is not just a simple no. It is a sharp blade that slices through the mask they've worn their entire life. It forces them to confront the most terrifying truth of all, that without control, without an audience, without anyone feeding their illusion, they are nothing. The moment you dare to turn your back is the moment their entire spell over you shatters. In today's video, we're going to dive deep into the 5 miserable stages a narcissist is forced to go through after being rejected by you. These aren't just psychological insights, they are also powerful reminders that you are far stronger than they ever believed, and your decision to walk away is a turning point they will carry with them for the rest of their lives. So, if you want to truly understand the collapse that happens inside a narcissist, and at the same time find inspiration to move forward with even greater strength, make sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on the notification bell, and stay with me until the very end. Because only when you see this process in its entirety will you grasp the true power of rejection and the priceless freedom you've reclaimed for yourself. Stage 1. The shock of meaninglessness. When a narcissist is rejected, they don't just experience the normal sadness of a breakup. For them, rejection is an earthquake in the soul, shaking the very foundations of the false self they spent years constructing. An ordinary person who hears the word no may feel hurt, disappointed, but eventually learns to accept it and move on. For the narcissist, however, rejection is a dagger straight into the heart of their illusion of power. It doesn't just wound them, it strips away their sense of being untouchable. Throughout the relationship, they were used to you revolving around them like a small planet orbiting the sun. They convinced themselves that your presence was guaranteed, that your love, your loyalty, your kindness was simply theirs by default. So when you finally reject them, they are forced into a shocking realization they were never the sun in this story, it was you. With one courageous choice, you extinguish their illusion. To them, this moment feels like a psychological death, the death of the false image they believed was real. What makes this stage even more brutal is the absolute surprise. In the narcissist's distorted mind, you were never strong enough to leave. They saw your kindness and called it weakness. They saw your loyalty and mocked it as stupidity. They saw your silence and mistook it for submission. Every act of love and compassion was twisted into proof that you would never dare to escape. But then you, the weak one in their eyes, became the very person who walked away. And that shatters the entire logic of their arrogance. In that moment, the narcissist experiences a complete inversion of power. For the first time, they feel powerless. For the first time, they see you holding a strength they never imagined you possessed. The truth is undeniable. You can live without them, but they cannot breathe without you. The scales of power flip, and this reversal leaves them in a state of profound shock. For a normal person, rejection can become a turning point towards self-reflection and growth. But for a narcissist, it is a mirror that exposes the raw truth. They are not divine, not irreplaceable, not the only one. They are just another human being. And in your eyes, not even one worth keeping. That is a truth they cannot endure. The shock of meaninglessness also brings an existential crisis. They ask themselves, if the person I once looked down on can walk away, what value do I really have? Yet instead of accepting the answer, they cling to denial. They tell themselves it's a misunderstanding, that you'll come back, that this was only a moment of impulsiveness. But the more they lie to themselves, the more your silence and determination drown them in despair. At this stage, many narcissists spiral into disbelief. They don't say, I'm in pain because I lost someone I loved. Instead, they repeat, how could this be? How dare they leave me? Their shock doesn't come from love. It comes from an ego injury. They cannot fathom that someone had the audacity to reject the greatness they thought they possessed. The painful irony is that you, the one who was once silent, patient, and enduring, become the living proof of the truth they have spent their whole lives avoiding. They are not invincible. And that realization makes them tremble to their core. As Carl Jung would explain, this is the moment when the narcissist's shadow is exposed. For so long, they wore a glamorous mask to cover the emptiness within. But rejection rips the mask away, revealing the weakness, the smallness, the ordinariness they feared all along. That's why this stage isn't just an emotional shock, but an inner war, a forced confrontation with the very darkness they've buried inside. From here, the downward spiral begins. Because once they lose the mirror that reflected their fake greatness, they are left with nothing but themselves. And when they finally look inward, they find nothing. That is why your rejection is not just a no. It is a death sentence for the illusion they built their entire existence upon. Stage 2, the rage of entitlement. If the first stage was shock, the collapse of their illusion of invincibility, then the second stage is the storm that erupts after the silence. This is when the narcissist's wounded ego explodes into a furious, unrelenting rage. But this is not ordinary anger. It's not like the tantrum of a child denied a toy, nor the righteous fury of an adult who feels betrayed. This is a rage saturated with power, entitlement, and a sense of divine right. They are not merely upset, they truly believe you have committed a crime against them. In the narcissist's world, your presence was never seen as a choice. To them, it was a debt you owed, a sacred duty you were never allowed to break. So when you walk away, their question is not, why? But how dare you? Their anger carries the flavor of a twisted divinity, like a false god enraged when a worshipper dares to leave the temple. Carl Jung once said, "Where love rules, there is no will to power, and where power predominates, love is lacking." The narcissist's rage is the perfect embodiment of this truth. They are not grieving love lost. They are furious over power stripped away. What they mourn is not you, but the domination they once enjoyed through you. Imagine an empire accustomed to absolute rule. Suddenly, a tiny province declares independence. This isn't just inconvenient, it shakes the entire empire. To the narcissist, your independence is that rebellion. And so, they summon their army, not swords and spears, but the familiar weapons of narcissistic warfare. Explosive anger, venomous criticism, baseless accusations, and cunning manipulation. At this stage, you may notice familiar tactics emerge. The silent stalking. They watch your social media, reread old messages, or send others to ask about you. Not out of love, but out of desperation to find any crack that proves you still need them. The guilt trip. They bring up your past mistakes, remind you of the favors they once gave, or paint you as cruel and ungrateful. The false tenderness. Suddenly they act gentle, remorseful, offering promises of change. But behind the softness is only one agenda: to pull you back into their orbit of power. This rage runs in cycles. It swells, then collapses, and with each collapse, they feel emptier inside. In anger, they chant to themselves, "They'll regret this. They'll never find anyone better than me." Yet each time reality interrupts, you remain calm, you move forward, you continue to exist without them. And that reality burns like salt in an open wound. Another fear begins to surface here, the fear of being replaced. The narcissist isn't only enraged that you left, they are terrified that you might find real love, a love where you are cherished and respected. To them, that possibility is the final insult, because it proves not only that you can live without them, but that you can thrive. In Jungian terms, this is when the shadow surges most violently. They bury their fear and smallness by projecting it outward, making you the villain, others the enemies, and the whole world a conspiracy against them. Yet, every outburst is just camouflage, hiding the truth they refuse to face. They are losing control, and their false self is cracking. What makes this stage so brutal is the reversal of power. For so long, they were used to you, fearing the loss of them. Now, they are the ones trembling at the loss of you. And the paradox is cruel. The louder their rage, the smaller, more ridiculous, and pitiful they appear to others. But beware, not every narcissist keeps this rage contained. Some transform it into campaigns of revenge, smear tactics, recruiting allies, spreading rumors, even attempting to sabotage your reputation or new relationships. This is when your calm resolve matters most, because your serenity is the fire that consumes them. For you, this rage may feel chaotic, but remember, it says nothing about your worth. It only exposes their weakness. Every scream of, "How dare you leave me?" is really the cry of a frightened soul facing the truth that they no longer hold power. The rage of entitlement will eventually pass, and when it does, they will stumble into the next stage where the theatrics of pity and manipulation begin to unfold. But before we move on, hold onto this truth. In this stage, you have already won, because instead of being pulled into their fury, you stayed calm. And that is what makes the narcissist's pain multiply 100-fold. Stage 3, the tragic performance before the crowd. If stage 2 was the eruption of rage in the shadows, then stage 3 is when the narcissist steps into the light, not to face the truth, but to perform. This is when their mask is painted most extravagantly, and their pain is transformed into a public theater. They refuse to accept defeat in silence. Instead, they turn their own collapse into a tragic play, designed to hold your gaze and the world's. The narcissist knows one thing very well. If they can't control you with direct power, they will try to control you through guilt. And the most effective tool for that is pity. And so the performance begins. You might see them post vague, melancholic updates like, "Maybe I'm just not worthy of love," or "Losing someone really destroys you." They confide in mutual friends, shed tears in public, or even flaunt a new partner as if they've already moved on. But notice carefully, none of this is about healing. These are props on a stage. In Jungian terms, this is the moment when the persona, the social mask, works overtime. The narcissist survives by the mask, a carefully painted image to hide the shadow within. When rejection cracks that mask, instead of accepting the break, they double down, thickening the makeup. They want outsiders to see them as either the poor victim or the strong survivor. Whichever script they choose, the goal is the same: to pull attention back to themselves. What makes this stage unbearable for them is your silence. When they post their sorrowful words, they hope you'll waver. When they showcase a new romance, they want you to feel jealousy. When they cry before others, they expect the whispers to reach you. But when you no longer react, when your eyes are no longer fixed on their stage, their performance becomes public humiliation. Because a play only has meaning if there's an audience. Without you, they are nothing more than an actor monologuing in an empty theater. At this stage, the narcissist often swings between emotional extremes. At times, they try to guilt you, to make you feel cold-hearted. Other times, they boast that they've moved on, hoping to spark your pride or envy. And when both fail, they sink into shame as they realize no one truly believes their script anymore. Deep down, they know their actions are hollow. The more they perform, the more they realize no one really cares. You remain unmoved. Mutual friends begin to doubt, and even the new partner they parade senses the awkwardness. The play doesn't restore their image. It becomes a mirror reflecting their emptiness. Carl Jung once said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." But the narcissist does the opposite. They paint on more artificial light, rather than facing their inner darkness. And so, this stage doesn't bring healing, it only prolongs the pain and the lie. For you, the one who has stepped out of the cycle, this is a test of your resolve. Their theatrics may stir your heart for a moment. Maybe they really are suffering. Maybe I was too harsh. But remember this, if they truly wanted change, they would seek confrontation and healing, not performances designed to drag your attention back. Pity does not save them, it only feeds their power games. Ironically, their public theatrics often backfire. While they think they're winning sympathy, people around them begin to notice the act. The cryptic posts, the recycled displays, all reveal the truth of a soul in panic. Instead of inspiring admiration, they expose instability. What they intended as a cry for empathy becomes evidence of their loss of control. That's why stage 3 often feels, to the narcissist, like a public disgrace. If rejection had remained silent, they could at least tell themselves, "Only the two of us know." But by turning it into theater, the whole world sees them scrambling to cling to a lost image. And this exposure cuts them even deeper. Eventually, every play must end. When the lights fade and the audience drifts away, the narcissist is left with the cold reality. They no longer control you, no longer receive admiration, no longer shine as the star of anyone's stage. In that silence, the humiliation hardens into an inner collapse, setting the stage for what comes next, the quiet unraveling within. Stage 4, the inner collapse. If stage 3 was the theater of public performance, then stage 4 is the dark backstage where the mask falls, the lights go out, and the narcissist is forced to face what they fear most, themselves. This is no longer the explosion of rage, no longer the tearful monologues. It is a silent unraveling, like a grand castle rotted from within, collapsing at the slightest breeze. At this stage, the narcissist loses the one thing they depended on most, the mirror of reflection. Throughout the relationship, you were that mirror, the source that confirmed their illusion of greatness. Every glance, every word of acknowledgement, even your tears, were used as proof of their power. But when you reject and walk away, that mirror shatters. And instead of seeing the image of a god they once believed in, they are confronted with a terrifying emptiness. Carl Jung called this the shadow, the rejected self, containing everything we refuse to acknowledge about ourselves. For the narcissist, that shadow is the fear that they are nothing, weak, ordinary, and unworthy of love. Their entire life has been an attempt to escape that truth by constructing the perfect mask. But now, with no one left to reflect their illusion, the shadow floods in and swallows them whole. This often leads to self-destruction. They plunge into extremes not to enjoy, but to escape. Some drown in alcohol or drugs. Others chase fleeting affairs and shallow pleasures. Some bury themselves in work, shopping, or gambling. On the surface, it may look like they are living life to the fullest, but in reality, it is nothing more than a desperate attempt to fill the black hole inside. The bitter truth is, even as they spiral, they know they are destroying themselves. They feel the loss of control acutely. But instead of pausing to face the darkness, they accelerate, as if running faster could help them outrun the shadow that follows. Yet the faster they run, the deeper they sink. Those around them begin to notice the cracks. Friends, co-workers, family see the instability, contradictory words, reckless actions, sudden outbursts of anger. The reputation they once built with layer upon layer of masks begins to fracture. The image of the successful one, the charming one, the invincible one, now looks like a caricature to anyone paying attention. And this public unraveling only drives them further into private collapse. For the narcissist, stage 4 feels like suffocation of the soul. It isn't loud like the rage of stage 2, nor dramatic like the performances of stage 3. It is more like a slow death, where pieces of the false self keep falling away. They feel small, useless, and lost. With no external anchor, they must face the void within the very thing they have spent a lifetime avoiding. In Jung's language, this is the moment of confrontation with the self. But instead of seeing it as an opportunity to grow, to integrate the shadow, the narcissist sees it as a death sentence. For them to accept the truth would mean dismantling the entire illusion of power that has sustained their ego for years. And so, they choose denial, escape, and self-destruction. What makes this stage both tragic and terrifying is the inner contradiction. On one hand, they despise themselves, feeling worthless and ashamed. On the other, they still try to cling to the broken fragments of their former grand self. This tension leaves them restless, anxious, and constantly teetering on the edge. And this is why many narcissists in this stage expose themselves without anyone needing to unmask them. In their desperate attempts to escape, they make mistakes, overreactions, contradictions, impulsive slips, or moments of raw exposure where their true nature spills out. Slowly the world begins to see them clearly. And once there is nowhere left to hide, the collapse becomes irreversible. Perhaps the cruelest truth of stage 4 is this: They know it will only get worse. Unlike rage, which burns out, unlike theater, which can be staged again, the inner collapse is a slow but unstoppable process. Each passing day, they feel a little more of their power gone, a little less control, a little more illusion stripped away. And their greatest fear remains, that in the end, there will be nothing left of them at all. Stage 5. The eternal obsession. Some wounds of the body eventually heal, but some scars of the soul never fade. For the narcissist, rejection is one of those scars. It isn't just a sad memory, it becomes an eternal obsession, a ghost that haunts them for the rest of their life. If stage 4 was their collapse in isolation and loss of control, then this final stage is darker still. Your presence turns into a phantom in their memory, one they can never escape. When an ordinary person is rejected, time allows them to accept, to heal, and to move on. But for the narcissist, rejection isn't simply an event in love, it is a negation of their very being. Their ego was built on the illusion of invincibility, of being irreplaceable. And when you walked away, that illusion shattered. From that moment on, in their subconscious, you ceased to be just a person. You became the symbol of failure, the living proof of the truth they never wanted to face. They are ordinary, they can be rejected, they are not the center of the universe. Your image is carved into their mind, like an engraving that cannot be erased. In new relationships, they may laugh, they may embrace another source of supply, but in their quietest moments, you return like a voice echoing in their head. When they see you happy without them, the memory twists the knife deeper. When they imagine you loved by someone who truly cherishes you, the obsession flares violently. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." For the narcissist, you are the unconscious part. They denied the shadow they refused to accept. And because they will not face it, you become their fate, haunting them. They may not say your name, but you are there in their silence, in their sleepless nights, in their forced laughter beside someone new. The tragedy is that this obsession does not come from love. It is not the aching longing of a heart that once cherished. It is the restless torment of an ego branded with defeat. You are the mark. They can never erase the scar of failure they never wanted exposed. In psychology, this is called narcissistic injury, the wound of the ego. But in this case, the wound never closes. They may cycle through countless relationships, trying hundreds of ways to reclaim their power. Yet each time they look into the eyes of someone new, somewhere in their unconscious, they still see your gaze, that steady look which once declared, "You no longer control me." And that memory unsettles them endlessly. In later years, the obsession takes strange forms. Sometimes they deny you, belittle you, or smear you to others, as if words could erase the truth. But the more they deny, the more vivid your ghost becomes. Because truth cannot be erased by lies. The truth remains, buried deep in their unconscious. You walked away, and they were powerless to stop you. In the end, this eternal obsession becomes a life sentence. It follows them through every day, every relationship, every stage of life. At parties where they laugh loudly, holding the hand of someone new, trying to prove to the world they're fine, beneath the makeup, beneath the mask, the truth stalks them. At night, when the noise fades, your name, your image, your rejection resurface. It is like an invisible mirror, reflecting back the reality. They are not omnipotent, not invincible, and they suffered the greatest defeat of their life, losing to you. For you, this truth carries a powerful message. You do not need revenge. You do not need to prove anything. Your decision to reject them, to walk away, is already the life sentence they must carry forever. While you move on, grow, and discover freedom and happiness, they remain trapped in the past, obsessed with a truth they cannot undo. That is why stage 5 is the eternal obsession. It does not last months or years. It is etched as a scar in their psyche, following them until their final breath. And that, in itself, is justice. A justice you did not need to deliver, only to claim by walking away and never turning back. Looking back at this entire journey, one truth stands clear. Your rejection was not just the end of a toxic relationship. It was a psychological sentence, an earthquake that shattered the narcissist's false world piece by piece. From the shock of meaninglessness, to the explosion of rage, to the public performance, the silent inner collapse, and finally the eternal obsession, every stage revolved around one undeniable truth. You proved them wrong. You proved they were not divine, not invincible, and certainly not the only one you needed to survive. The truth is, you didn't just walk away. You broke the curse. Because in every moment the narcissist tried to rebuild their illusion of power, your silence and your steadfastness made those efforts meaningless. And that is what turned you into a ghost in their mind, a memory they can never escape. This is not cruel revenge. It is natural justice, a justice that requires no sword, no threats, but rises from the simplest strength of all, the courage to choose yourself. Carl Jung once said, "The person who does not confront their own shadow will be controlled by it for life." The narcissist is living proof of this. They ran from their shadow, but your rejection dragged it into the light, leaving them nowhere to hide. Meanwhile, you, through courage, have stepped onto the opposite path, the path of healing, growth, and freedom in truth. So if you are hearing these words right now, remember this: you did not lose by leaving a narcissist. You won. Victory is not about making them suffer. It's about reclaiming your worth, learning to love yourself, and opening the door to a new life where you are no one's puppet ever again. And if this message resonates with you, make sure to subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, and join me in the next videos. Because here, we don't just analyze the darkness of narcissism, we also discover together the brighter path, the path of healing and freedom. Stay until the end, because every story, every lesson can become a doorway into a deeper understanding of your own strength. This journey is not easy, but you are not alone. And every step you take with determination becomes light. A light that dissolves the shadows the narcissist left behind. You are worthy of peace. And no matter how hard they try, the narcissist can never take that away from you again.